Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Swallowed Star 2, Land of Origin based on novel. So let's start. Luo Feng had been in the infinite space treasure trove for over 2 centuries, and his understanding of the great Tao of life and death was immensely profound. On the topic of the great Tao of life and death, he had created 19 different secret techniques at the first realm of Godly King alone. He didn't care about the quantity of secret techniques. Each one had been comprehended naturally by himself. When he enhanced the chaotic whole undying light to the second realm of Godly King level this time, Luo Feng's accumulation finally underwent a qualitative transformation. One by one, branches of the great Tao of life and death emerged in his mind. Luo Feng meticulously contemplated and integrated them. 3 more days passed before Luo Feng finally stopped. I have comprehended 6 branches of the great Tao of life and death, but, clearly, it's not yet perfected. Luo Feng slightly furrowed his brow. It seems my accumulation is still insufficient to comprehend all branches. How many branches does an origin great Tao have? That was uncertain. For instance, the origin Tao of space has 9 major branches. Entry is relatively easy, but as one goes further, it becomes increasingly difficult. One must eventually merge the 9 branches into one to attain the ultimate realm. The time primordial Tao, with only 3 major branches, is extremely difficult to enter. But once someone becomes a godly king through this path, their strength is terrifying. In the infinite space treasure vault, Luo Feng once saw the perfect inheritance, temporal walker, which involves the fusion of time and space, forming an even more terrifying time-space Tao. Of course, the threshold for cultivation is unbelievably high. Life and destruction, these are 2 great Taos that exist within the supreme rules, each with 6 major branches. With these 2 as my foundation, I cast my own Tao of life and death. The Tao of life and death should have 9 major branches. Luo Feng now had 6 branches comprehended, with the remaining 3 vaguely taking shape. However, to thoroughly penetrate them, he still needed accumulation. The 6 branches I've comprehended are Blood Dripping Lineage, Red Sun Lineage, Annihilation Lineage, Eternal Lineage, Black Smoke Lineage, Walker Lineage. Having clearly understood these 6 branches, Luo Feng felt somewhat melancholic. After all, my abilities are limited. In the fusion of life and destruction, I discarded too many paths. Luo Feng was very clear about this. Life and destruction, each with their 6 major branches, could integrate some aspects from a few branches during the fusion process, resulting in certain possibilities. Therefore, the branches of the great Tao of life and death, the possibilities are numerous. Perhaps there are 30, 50, or even over 100 possibilities. For example, 36 branches. A total of 108 branches to fully interpret all the mysteries of life and destruction fusion. But exhausting all options is not something Luo Feng, as just a godly king, could accomplish. At this time, one must make choices. Perfection. Luo Feng still hasn't felt its limit. Discarding is a must. Discard the uninteresting ones, choose what you truly desire. Following the direction you've set, then confirm each branch afterward. By discarding a lot, I chose the core parts one wanted. Luo Feng thought, even so, it takes a full 9 major branches. Each branch is stronger than the life 6 major branches, or the 6 branches of destruction. The foundation is exceedingly profound. Sigh. Luo Feng sat cross-legged on this lake-heart island, now standing up to look around him. I've comprehended branches of the great Tao, yet infinite space has not awarded any reward points. Luo Feng speculated, could it be that it needs to be demonstrated? Infinite space, a treasure land, cannot probe the thoughts of every cultivator at every moment. Walker lineage. Luo Feng pointed casually. Buzz. Countless secret patterns emerged naturally, forming a dark humanoid shape. This dark human shadow seemed to contain endless might, yet all of it was condensed within this tiny figure. Every movement appeared capable of destroying heaven and earth. Merely with this one branch, it would already be considered a very strong benchmark in the first realm of Godly King. This dark human shadow was formed by countless secret patterns, which flowed and interpreted the mysteries of the Tao. Infinite space sensed all of this, and immediately information was transmitted to the mark on Luo Feng's palm. Trialist, Luo Feng from Land of Origin. Based on the two great Taos of life and destruction as the foundation, you've pioneered a new great Tao. Evaluation of the new great Tao, superior. Reward points 10,000 points. On this new great Tao, you've finally taken the first step. You must continue to work hard. Body of primal chaos realm, reaching the spiritual will of the ultimate realm of God King, evaluation of spiritual will, superior. Reward points 10,000 points. Your spiritual will is relatively excellent, please continue to maintain it after becoming a godly king. Total reward points 20,182.01 points. Luo Feng sensed this information, everything was as expected. The reward points for pioneering a great Tao branch, his master Emperor Chu had already told him. Let's try again. Luo Feng extended his hand to point again, and numerous Tao secret patterns converged, eventually coalescing into a drop of blood. This drop of blood, condensed by the Tao secret patterns, faintly contained an endless breath of life, yet it seemed incredibly heavy and even more difficult to shake. This is the blood-dripping lineage. A new great Tao only rewards points for the first Tao branch you comprehend. There are no points for subsequent branches. Earning these points is just too difficult, Luo Feng reflected in frustration. Dealing with the spiritual beings in infinite space alone, on the one hand, takes too long, and on the other hand, the main core areas have been occupied by the great powers. If I act alone, I can only target spiritual beings in remote locations. How many points can one earn from spiritual beings not occupied by the great powers? Therefore, the methods to obtain a large number of reward points still rely on pioneering great Taos and spiritual will. Opening a new branch of the great Tao is even more difficult than reaching the second realm of Godly King, Luo Feng secretly said. The accumulations along his paths of life and destruction were such that with a bit more research, he could quickly reach the second realm of Godly King. The Tao of life and death was the path Luo Feng had chosen during his time in the primordial cosmos, the one he selected from deep within his heart. Yet creating even one branch was so difficult. This demonstrates just how hard it is to gain reward points. Many ancient godly kings believe the value of infinite space is at the very bottom among all the treasure lands, which is understandable. With his talents, Luo Feng has only slightly more than 20,000 points to date. With such points, converted into the merit points of the two ancient countries as a guest elder, it would be only a few 100 million at most. Those ancient godly kings earn far fewer points than Luo Feng. The value of infinite space lies in the inexistent inheritances and treasures outside. Luo Feng immediately reviewed the infinite space treasure vault. The vault contained two types of resources, inheritances and treasures. Most ancient godly kings come to the infinite treasure land at great cost, all for the inheritance within. Here, one can find special grade inheritances, and even perfect inheritances, that are not available in the outside world. On the path of cultivation, the importance of inheritance is surely above that of treasures. With so few reward points, naturally, they should be used where they are most needed. Luo Feng had never bought any treasures before. The Godly King's second realm chapters of world life form and chaotic whole beast body both require 3,000 reward points. That's a total of 6,000 points, which I need to reserve. With such a scarce amount of points, Luo Feng was only willing to set aside one special grade inheritance for both the paths of life and destruction. The ultimate chapters of a special grade inheritance were too expensive, he couldn't afford to read them for the time being. Let's check the treasures. Once exchanged, treasures in the infinite space can be teleported directly to the true body in the land of origin. Treasures information. Ranked number 1 was the Heart's Desire flying boat, which required 20,000 points to exchange. It was a flying boat beyond Godly King level, stable and robust, unbreakable within the source world, capable of instant travel to any location within the source world. Unbreakable within the source world. Luo Feng found this very tempting. To think that one could even purchase a God King grade secret treasure with reward points from the infinite space. Such treasures could surely make even the emperors and monarchs of the two ancient countries envious. If I bought it, I wouldn't dare to use it, Luo Feng thought and moved on. The second ranked treasure was the Dao map, which required 20,000 points to exchange. The Dao map could deduce secret techniques suitable for oneself and analyze the great Dao to assist in cultivation, significantly improving the efficiency of comprehension. The weaker the strength, the better the assistive effects of the Dao map. It could even ease one's path to the peak of the second realm of Godly King. Danger reminder: to master a complete great Dao still requires self-enlightenment. The Dao map cannot help in the slightest. And because one relies on the Dao map for early enlightenment, the difficulty of attaining a complete great Dao eventually becomes extremely high. Please choose carefully. If you use it merely to deduce secret techniques suited for yourself, there will be no future troubles. The ninth ranked treasure, a Lotus Heart Seed, required 18,000 points to exchange. The Lotus Heart Seed could grow a life lotus within one's internal universe, making the internal universe more stable and the physical body full of endless vitality, greatly enhancing physical strength. The flesh body and the great Tao of life origin have a perfect affinity, significantly increasing the efficiency of cultivation, as if one were the favored child of the great Tao of life. This Lotus Heart Seed is a good item, Luo Feng thought covetously. Strengthening his world life form could naturally advance his strength further. More importantly, it could make him the favored child of the great Tao of life. The only problem was the high price. Luo Feng couldn't bear to spend all 18,000 points in one go. The treasure destruction scale, one piece required 12,000 points to exchange. Fusing the destruction scale into the body could transform one's flesh into the body of a destruction demon race, perfectly matching the great Tao of destruction origin, and greatly increasing cultivation efficiency, as if one were the favored child of the great Tao of destruction origin. Danger reminder: 1. Fusing with the destruction scale will bring an onslaught of a killing will, and one's spiritual will must reach the ultimate realm of God King to integrate successfully. 2. It is recommended to have an avatar before exchanging. If there is only one true body, transforming into the body of a destruction demon race will affect the cultivation of other great Taos. Transform into the body of a destruction demon race. Luo Feng was tempted. He had an avatar, and his spiritual will fit the requirement. Of all the treasures he had seen, the Lotus Heart Seed and the Destruction Scale were the most appealing, because both could aid in the cultivation of the great Taos of life and destruction. The Lotus Heart Seed was more helpful and carried no dangers. Yet, the Destruction Scale was much cheaper. Become the favored child of the great Tao of destruction origin. I want to try what it feels like to be a favored child of the Tao. Luo Feng carefully reviewed all the treasure information, and without further hesitation, decided on the destruction scale. Exchange. Luo Feng gritted his teeth. The hard-earned reward points, a full 12,000, were all spent at once. An invisible fluctuation descended quickly, and a destruction scale, had already arrived at the quiet room in the Huyang City Lord's mansion, in Luo Feng's hands. Within a spatial layer of the Star Tower, equivalent to a secret treasure, beyond the level of a godly king. Luo Feng looked at the warm scale in his palm, in the infinite space treasure vault. The cheapest treasure, beyond the level of a godly king, was also about 12,500 merit points, almost no different from the scale of destruction. This scale. Luo Feng was patient, he didn't use it right away, instead he carefully observed. The scale was primarily black, with edges that gradually turned transparent and tinged with green. Magnified by billions of times, one could glimpse the mysterious secret patterns on the scale. Countless engraved secret patterns completely sealed the scale's aura. When Luo Feng's consciousness tried to touch it, upon contact with the scale, he felt an intensely terrifying murderous will. Kill, kill, kill. This terrifying will struck at Luo Feng's spirit. Only with the will of the ultimate realm of God King could one maintain clarity under such an assault. Just a single scale, and one that has been refined at that, still harbors such dreadful murderous will. Luo Feng was secretly alarmed. How terrifying must the life that was the source of this scale be? To be able to refine a scale, allowing the weaker, godly kings to obtain the body of a destroyer clan demon. The strength of the refiner is also unfathomable, thought Luo Feng. The more he understood, the more he realized his own insignificance. Be it the scant information leaked from the special grade inheritance, or items like the scale of destruction, all allowed Luo Feng a glimpse into the higher planes of the world. If Yuan can leave behind numerous treasure lands, then he can leave behind so much resources in these treasuries. Clearly, outside the source world, Yuan's status must be extremely high. Far surpassing the ancestors of the two great ancient countries, Luo Feng thought. Luo Feng carefully observed the scale of destruction for a full 3 days, recorded the part of the secret patterns he was able to observe, and only then began to truly integrate it into his body. His perfect divine body split off an avatar that contained 99% of his divine power reserve. The remaining small amount of the perfect divine body, once again, began to crazily absorb energy through the small universe, gradually recovering. I will transform this enormous avatar. Luo Feng held the black scale and pressed it directly onto his chest, where the black scale quickly merged into his skin. At the time of the exchange, Luo Feng had already received detailed instructions for its use. Kill. Destruction. The terrifying will of slaughter swept over his spirit, but Luo Feng's expression did not change, remaining calm as he observed the changes in his body. Once this scale of destruction merged into his skin, the hidden power naturally erupted, beginning to erode Luo Feng's entire body, causing his skin, flesh, and bones to naturally transform. The erosion was incredibly fast, and even the energy reserves of this avatar of Luo Feng, which were more plentiful than those of a world life form, could only hold out for little more than 10 breaths before the body was naturally reformed. At the instant the transformation was successful, the scale of destruction naturally disintegrated, and the original murderous will dissipated, leaving no further effect. Even the most minute components of the body have been altered. Luo Feng closely examined this destroyer clan demon avatar. This enormous body was covered with scales similar to the scale of destruction, covering Luo Feng's face as well, but these scales were a pale blue, and their aura was much weaker than that of the scale of destruction. His eyes glowed golden, a tail naturally grew out, and 6 horns sprouted naturally from his head. These 6 horns bore some resemblance to one aspect of the great Tao of destruction origin. This destroyer clan demon avatar is average in strength, barely meeting the threshold of the second realm of godly kings even after I transformed it using a sufficiently large godly body. It's far inferior to the world life form avatar. Luo Feng shook his head lightly. But it truly is the favored child of the great Tao of destruction origin. Luo Feng extended his right claw and waved it lightly. Whoosh! He could easily manipulate the mysteries of the great Tao of destruction origin. Luo Feng felt as if his body were a part of the great Tao of destruction origin itself, able to use his body to sense and understand the great Tao of destruction origin. Of course, this body's sensitivity to other great Taos was rather vague. I have taken the 5-colored treasure medicine before. The 5-colored treasure medicine makes both the body and spirit resonate with the great Tao of destruction origin, continuing for roughly 3 eras. While the scale of destruction only transforms the body, but it does not affect the spirit. Yet, the compatibility of the body is stronger than that of the 5-colored treasure medicine. In terms of overall effect, the scale of destruction can reach about 70 to 80% of the 5-colored treasure medicine, thought Luo Feng. Most importantly, this state is permanent. Luo Feng was very pleased with this state. A dose of the 5-colored treasure medicine was valued at 10 million merit points. The body of the Destroyer clan demon could maintain about 70 to 80% of the 5-colored treasure medicine state permanently, and its value was self-evident. My cultivation in the great Tao of destruction origin is going to completely surpass that of the great Tao of life origin, realized Luo Feng. Ever since Morosa was able to exhibit a complete path of destruction, the speed of cultivation along both paths was quite similar. But now, the speed of progress in the great Tao of destruction origin had accelerated. In the infinite space treasure vault, there was also the lotus heart seed that could make one a favored child of the great Tao of life origin, but it was too expensive. Time passed, era by era. Though he had become a favored child of the great Tao of destruction origin, he still needed time to accumulate his own strength. Compared to the ancient existences of the land of origin, Luo Feng was much too young. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. In one of the deep spaces of the dream domain. Here the darkness was unfathomable, countless tunnel passages formed a labyrinth-like world. Within one of these caves, Luo Feng transformed into a large stone, cultivating through the great destruction heart refining technique. Yuan's inherited will, Lai Yuan technique, of which the great destruction heart refining technique, that cultivated will, showed increasing effects, as Luo Feng's great Tao of destruction origin made progress. Rumble tilde tilde tilde, in the center of the endless chaos hole, Luo Feng's spirit had already transformed into a vague human silhouette, which vaguely resembled his appearance. The spirit silhouette sat cross-legged, resisting the continuous infiltration and erosion of the dream domain, as well as the wear from the great destruction heart refining method. I have been in the dream domain for over 150 eras, and I feel my spirit continuously transforming, yet its strength will forever fail to break through the bottleneck of the ultimate realm of God King. Luo Feng found this path exceedingly arduous. Cultivation in the dream domain was torturous. Luo Feng always pushed his limits, cultivating until he completely succumbed, falling into the dreamscapes of the dream domain. Of course, once he entered the dream, he would stop the great destruction heart refining method, and he would quickly awaken. Over 150 eras, Luo Feng had succumbed dozens of times. The advancement of the Great Tao and the pioneering of new Great Taos, these enhanced Luo Feng's understanding of the Tao, and his spiritual will naturally improved. The infinite space obliterated spiritual beings time and again, which benefited the spirit as well. The Great Destruction Heart refining technique was consistently upheld, and after gaining the Demon Clan avatar of destruction, the effects were even more pronounced. I can feel myself transforming, yet I have not broken through. It's no wonder that on the land of origin, apart from Emperor Ming, others only transcend the godly king level, after fully understanding a complete origin Great Tao. Luo Feng admired Emperor Ming at this moment. Emperor Ming, in terms of soul foundation, definitely couldn't compare to his perfect divine body. Yet he managed to transcend godly king level in his spiritual will before understanding the complete Great Tao. Of course, As an imperial clan god king of the flame wind ancient country, Emperor Ming, once he ascended, was too dazzling, and the resources he received were definitely far more than Luo Feng's own. What a freestanding godly king like him received was probably just a fraction of what two major imperial clan cores had. Bracing against the profound intrusions of the dream domain and the dual refinement of the great destruction heart refining technique, Luo Feng was still able to multitask, just that under such conditions, he could not focus too much on cultivation. As time went on, Luo Feng gradually grew more exhausted, even unable to multitask, and all his avatars in the outside world temporarily went into seclusion. Luo Feng didn't stop, but kept persevering, until the very limit, until he sank into the dream. During the past 150 eras, Luo Feng had sunk into dreams dozens of times, and he would reflect upon each awakening. Most of the dreams, Luo Feng would forget, while a small part he managed to recall. The parts he remembered were very chaotic, and some were even contradictory. But there were some scenes that Luo Feng felt were far beyond the scope of the source world. The ancestor summons you. A voice rang out. Luo Feng forgot who he was. At this moment, he was enormous in stature, seemingly possessing unfathomable power. Yet, he stood there with utmost respect, patiently waiting. I've made great merit points this time, even receiving a summons from the ancestor. I wonder how the ancestor will reward me. Emotions of joy bubbled up within him. When will the ancestor summon me again? I've been waiting so long. An emotion of weariness surfaced. How will the ancestor punish me? A feeling of fear began to grow. The dreamscape was incredibly chaotic, as if the scenes of visiting the ancestor had happened many times, and he seemed to be constantly awaiting a summon from the ancestor. Finally, a giant eye appeared. Luo Feng looked at this huge eye with utmost respect. Ancestor. This so-called ancestor was shrouded and veiled by endless great dows. In the dream, Luo Feng couldn't see its true form, seeing only that enormous eye, which seemed to be etched into Luo Feng's soul, instilling fear in him, without any thought of resistance. The entire dreamscape began to tremble. Having stopped the great destruction heart refining technique, Luo Feng's spiritual will was already struggling to break free from the dream. In the instant he saw the giant eye, Luo Feng's spiritual will instinctively resisted fiercely, causing the entire dreamscape to start to fragment and shatter. Whoosh! It completely shattered, and everything vanished. Luo Feng regained consciousness. Luo Feng revealed his true appearance, his eyes filled with horror. Why is this memory so clear this time? In the past, most of what he saw in the dreams would be forgotten, and the few memories that remained would not have any impact. But this time, that eye. Luo Feng still remembered it after waking up. Although it had blurred somewhat, that eye still filled Luo Feng's heart with endless fear. Even his spiritual will couldn't suppress this sense of dread. Fear, trembling with terror. Uncontrollable. Only thoughts of fear and submission. How could this be? Luo Feng immediately dissipated that avatar, self-annihilating. In Huyang City, within the Star Tower. Luo Feng's perfect divine body, demon clan avatar of destruction, and world life form avatar, all showed expressions of shock and anger. Unable to forget, unable to obliterate. Luo Feng attempted to erase that memory, but he couldn't. This segment of memory had already permeated and fused into his entire soul, even if he destroyed all memory and left his brain a blank slate. This memory would still emerge. Erase it. Luo Feng employed the Great Destruction Heart refining technique, and the Great Destruction Heart refining technique scrubbed away the stray thoughts from his mind, the fears within. That's better. He continued to maintain the Great Destruction Heart refining technique. As soon as thoughts of fear or submission arose, they were obliterated, and Luo Feng felt his spirit become much more serene and ethereal. Yet it remains rooted in the soul, acknowledged Luo Feng, realizing the issue. The great destruction heart refining technique could only scour away all stray thoughts, making the spirit sufficiently ethereal. But it could not destroy the root. I have heard that when cultivating the primordial bloodline, the wills remaining within the primordial bloodline will contaminate the spirit, even if one undergoes reincarnation like Di Fu, where there is no will contamination. After reincarnation, this memory contamination still exists. Memory contamination can only be controlled by oneself. It is difficult to eradicate. Memory contamination is less severe than will contamination. But it is a contamination all the same. Di Fu had carried it all along. And now, Luo Feng too bore the weight of memory contamination. Huyang City, inside the city owner's mansion. Luo Feng sat alone on the pavilion drinking wine, his brows furrowed, clearly troubled by something. Moyu Qingyang, that foolish lad, has finally comprehended another primal chaos realm secret technique. His accumulation has thickened somewhat. Morosa walked within the mansion in good spirits. Regardless of the distance Moyu Qingyang was from the primal chaos realm, he was getting closer. Although the second disciple of Blade River sect, Xinyu, was far more talented, no other disciple surpassed his own. Upon looking up, Morosa saw Luo Feng in the distance on the pavilion. Strange. Morosa felt puzzled. There's something off about the master. Swoosh. Morosa quickly made his way up to the pavilion, cautiously addressing him in the corridor below the stairs. Master. Luo Feng glanced at Morosa. What is it? Does master have troubles? Morosa observed and inquired. I wonder if there's any way I can help. Morosa believed himself to have reached the second realm of Godly King, utterly surpassing the master in every aspect. Perhaps he could resolve the master's trouble. You cannot help, Luo Feng shook his head. Master, perhaps you could tell me? Morosa asked. Luo Feng chuckled. I have encountered a great terror, fear uncontrollably springs forth in my heart. This greatly affects my cultivation. Do you have a method to prevent me from feeling fear? In full force, the great destruction heart refining technique indeed had the power to crush all stray thoughts, making one's spirit sufficiently pure and ethereal. But this also diffused much of his heart force, slowing down Luo Feng's thoughts considerably, and greatly reducing the efficiency of his contemplation and cultivation. It was less than half as effective as in his prime state. How could Luo Feng be in good spirits, bearing such a negative impact for the long term? He was pondering how to solve this trouble. Encountered a great terror. Fears cropping up. Morosa was puzzled. What in the land of origin could possibly invoke fear in the master? Luo Feng just smiled. Would it cause the master to die completely? Even affect our kin? Morosa inquired, suspecting that the master had encountered a terrifying foe. There is no danger of death, Luo Feng said. It's just affecting my cultivation. If it's not lethal, what's there to be afraid of? Morosa asked. Luo Feng shook his head. One cannot control the heart by nature, and fear arises naturally. Control the heart, isn't that enough? Morosa looked at Luo Feng, puzzled. Control the heart. Luo Feng was slightly taken aback. As a godly king, with the will of the ultimate realm of God King, even he felt an intrinsic terror when faced with the memory of that huge eye. Yes, it's merely memory contamination. A threat even less than that of will contamination. What's there to fear? Intrinsic fear of life. Then I'll control the intrinsic. All fear comes from within. Control the heart, and you can control the intrinsic. Luo Feng vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving Morosa on the pavilion with a trace of confusion. What terrifying thing has the master encountered? Morosa wondered, bemused. Inside a space within Star Tower. Luo Feng sat cross-legged, seizing the great destruction heart-refining technique. The memory of that huge eye, as if gazing through eternity, looking down on him. Fear surfaced once more in his heart. His spirit trembled. Fear, subjugation, dread. Steady. It's merely a segment of memory within a dream, it can't threaten me, why should I fear it? Don't fear, face it. Face it. Luo Feng kept convincing himself. But knowing that is one thing. Life's intrinsic is another. Fear continually bloomed, spreading ever wider, the horror brought by that huge eye dug deeper into Luo Feng's heart. Face it. It's only memory. Luo Feng forced himself to confront it. As time passed by, the fear penetrated deeply, becoming more influential, until Luo Feng could only utilize the great destruction heart-refining technique, erasing all stray thoughts, to restore the clarity and ethereal nature of his spirit. After erasing the thoughts, Luo Feng again stopped performing the heart-refining method, and continued to face it. Control your own heart, your own intrinsic. Luo Feng kept confronting it willingly. From initially having to perform the great destruction heart-refining technique every few days to erase all stray thoughts, gradually, tens of days, thousands of days, the longer he observed, the more familiar he became with the horror brought by the huge eye, the stronger his control over his spirit. After half an age, the fear of facing it is now quite weak. Even without the assistance of the great destruction heart-refining technique, Luo Feng could withstand facing the huge eye for an extended period. Those godly kings who cultivated the primordial bloodline did the same, repeatedly challenging and suppressing the will of their bloodline. This, too, was a kind of tempering, and like the cloud sky god king, reached the god king ultimate realm will through such tempering. Luo Feng's spirit had also undergone transformation during this period. Is this giant eye real, belonging to some terrifying being? Or is it merely an illusion within the dream realm? Luo Feng was quite curious. It is the most terrifying existence I have ever witnessed, even though it was only seen in the dream realm. We could try to create an extremely terrifying secret technique. Luo Feng was inspired to create a secret technique. In previous years, he had comprehended all 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death. With the 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death, I can try to create this technique. Luo Feng faced the giant eye, ignoring the slight fear it inspired, as he attempted to create the secret technique. The 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death were as follows: the initial 6 branches that he had understood, blood dripping, red sun, annihilation, eternal, black smoke, and walker lineages, and the later 3 that he continued to comprehend, the skylight, nihility, and reincarnation lineages. The 9 branches encompassed the core essence of the Tao of Life and Death. Each branch extracted some mysteries from both the 6 life branches and 6 destruction branches, each extremely formidable. That giant eye should focus on the eternal branch, blood-dripping branch, and reincarnation branch. Luo Feng had faced it for so long that he now had a direction for the secret technique. And then supplemented by the red sun branch, black smoke branch, and nihility branch. The integration of 6 branches. A technique that perfectly integrates them should capture some essence of that eye. Luo Feng began to ponder. The conception was so lofty that creating it proved more difficult than Luo Feng had anticipated. Whenever he encountered confusion, Luo Feng would directly face the giant eye, watch it closely, study why it caused such great horror, while searching for inspiration to refine the technique. Fully focused on creating the secret technique, Luo Feng had no interest in other matters. Even when the reincarnation tower invited him to join an expedition, Luo Feng temporarily declined, saying he was in closed-door cultivation, and had no interest in exploring treasures. I no longer feel fear when facing this giant eye. After more than a decade of studying the giant eye and trying to create the secret technique, no matter how he faced it, he no longer felt any fear. Once fear vanished, the great eye's help in cultivation also lessened. The 7 emotions of heart refining technique increases my perception. Luo Feng began to cycle the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. In this state, emotions such as joy, anger, sorrow, thought, grief, fear, and shock were much more intense, and even slight emotions could raise huge waves in his spirit. Boom. Once he activated the 7 emotions of heart refining technique, the giant eye once again provoked a strong sense of fear in Luo Feng, as if he were facing it for the first time, his spirit trembling with fear. Good, good, this is the feeling I want. Luo Feng was overjoyed and again went to perfect the secret technique. The secret technique was gradually perfected. Decades passed. Finally, after 34 decades of Luo Feng facing the giant eye, I've done it. Inside the Star Tower, Luo Feng was incredibly excited. The long years of research had finally led to the success of creating the secret technique, a sense of accomplishment that left Luo Feng very satisfied. I have finally created this secret technique. It wasn't easy. It was much harder than the chaotic whole undying light. Luo Feng was incredibly thrilled. This memory from the dream realm wasn't a disaster, but a blessing. Now, even while maintaining the 7 emotions of heart refining technique, that giant eye could no longer inspire fear in Luo Feng. Because Luo Feng had researched it too deeply. Understanding too much, the mystery was lost, and naturally, the sense of horror disappeared. After all, it was just an image from a dream realm memory. The dream realm memory I studied is just an image. If it truly exists, I wonder how terrifying it would be, Luo Feng thought. In essence, the secret technique I've created this time is strictly the life and destruction Dao second realm secret method. Luo Feng smiled brightly, his emotions under the heart refining technique even more intense. Last time, the perfected, chaotic whole undying light actually merged 2 life branches with 3 destruction branches, a total of 5 branches. This time, it was the full integration of 6 branches from the 9 branches of the great Tao of life and death, a true life and destruction Tao second realm secret method. Although he hadn't tested it yet, Luo Feng could tell that the power of this new secret technique was far beyond that of the chaotic whole undying light. Having been a god king for over 2 centuries, it is only now, with the help of a dream realm memory, that I have finally created this move. Luo Feng knew that without such accumulation, it would have been difficult to create such a technique in a short period. This time was entirely influenced by the memory of the dream realm, which provided a clear direction, and took over 3 decades to create such a technique. This secret technique, with each branch being extremely powerful, and the integration of 6 branches, could its power match an ultimate realm secret technique? Luo Feng was somewhat curious. Emperor Gui Shu, Wuxin God King, they all had ultimate realm secret techniques. While each of his branches was strong, it was Emperor Gui Shu and Wuxin God King who unified all branches into a perfect entity, creating a qualitative change that truly made their techniques ultimate realm secret techniques. Let's see. The secret technique could be executed with the body or different weapons. With a blade it would be a terrifying blade technique, with an axe technique, and with a hammer, a destruction hammer technique. Luo Feng stretched out his hand. His right hand darkened instantly, as if becoming the core of the entire world. If the world were to end, his hand would remain unharmed. Carrying an endless terror, Luo Feng's palm struck out with 5 fingers. Boom, in a flash, his 5 fingers shone dazzlingly bright, forcefully destroying everything. The invisible membrane of the source world was shattered, tearing open to reveal a trench several zhong long. Outside the membrane of the source world, rolling black currents surged through the trench. This move shall be called the Great Extinction style. Luo Feng, seeing this scene, was quite satisfied. This segment of dream memory no longer produces the slightest fear. Luo Feng carefully observed the giant eye within the memory, feeling regret instead. Regret that it was a dream memory, not clear enough. Having become a godly king for over 2 centuries, I've spent almost all the time in the dream domain undergoing the destruction refinement method. After wholeheartedly creating the Great Extinction style, a hint of fatigue blossomed in Luo Feng's heart. While maintaining the 7 emotions of heart refining, his inner emotional turmoil was also intense, and the slightest bit of fatigue spread through his spirit. It's time to relax my body and mind. For my heart refining, I originally chose the Great Destruction heart refining technique and the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. Now, it's time to relax with the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. With just a thought, Luo Feng immediately took action. A black-clad avatar of Luo Feng left Huyang City, heading first towards the Shi Kingdom. I've always wanted to completely kill the 3 monarchs of the Shi Kingdom to avenge my teacher. But I don't have a deep understanding of the Shi Kingdom. The black-clad Luo Feng wandered leisurely, his knowledge of many places across the continent relying on intelligence reports. But this time, Luo Feng decided to see for himself. Throughout his tour of the continent, Luo Feng maintained the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. The reputation of Tian Kuan's emperor of the Shi Kingdom is quite bad, invading neighboring areas and killing at will. But the cities within the Shi Kingdom are quite prosperous. Luo Feng toured city after city, listening and watching any musician proficient in the music illusion technique. Gourmet food, dances, music. Under the influence of the 7 emotions of heart refining technique, the pleasure Luo Feng experienced was 100-fold, 1,000-fold. Good. Well done. Upon tasting delicious food, Luo Feng was generous with his reward, casually tossing out hundreds of cosmic sand, exciting the shop owner. To become an eternal true god through culinary skills. Impossible. It's impossible to be this awful. Tasting something appalling, Luo Feng's suffering was also magnified 100-fold, 1,000-fold, and he couldn't help but seize the chef in anger. It turned out that after he paid a hefty price for the chef's cooking, the chef had his apprentice do the cooking, and the apprentice did it carelessly. In the end, Luo Feng smashed up the restaurant before finally departing. I come to listen to music, and you're shouting and yelling next to me. Luo Feng kicked an eternal true god clear out of the entire city, and immediately all the guests quieted down like chickens. The musicians also trembled in their hearts, playing even more earnestly. While exploring various places, Luo Feng was very relaxed. Under the influence of the 7 emotions of heart refining technique, his behavior was even more unrestrained than usual, laughing and cursing as he pleased. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. One day, Luo Feng came to the Wind Snow Tower, attracted by its fame. I've heard that the music and illusory realm performances of the Snow Tower Master are ranked among the top 10 throughout the Shi Kingdom. Luo Feng sat leisurely, taking out a collection of fine wines, as he couldn't count on the place to have good wine for listening to music. These wines were all sought out by Luo Feng from gourmet destinations across the lands, affordable, yet each with unique characteristics. Luo Feng took a satisfying sip, the fine wine intoxicating his senses. The sound of music began to rise. The Snow Tower Master had already begun her performance, her snow-white wings and a face covered with soft down, her eyes kind and gentle. She held a flute-like instrument and played. The music was tender, as if penetrating the soul. All cultivators in attendance enjoyed the endurance within. With Luo Feng's spiritual will, even deploying the 7 emotions of heart refining, it was hard for him to completely fall into an illusory realm again, but music that resonated with the soul, even without entering an illusory realm, was still a delight. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Among the musicians I've heard, she would rank in the top 3, admired Luo Feng. The Snow Tower Master performed one piece after another, a total of 12 pieces, each more soul-piercing as it progressed. Luo Feng listened deeply immersed. He felt as if he had returned to his youth, when he went to the martial arts hall for practice. To the times he tasted his parents' cooking, many beautiful and warm memories surged to his heart. Only when the music halted did Luo Feng come to his senses, with tears in his eyes. I unknowingly entered an illusory realm. Luo Feng was astonished as he looked at the Snow Tower Master with the snow-white wings. Among the musicians I have seen, she ranks first. 12 pieces, each a primal chaos realm level, and all perfectly fused into one. This Snow Tower Master, she must not be far from achieving the primal chaos realm. The most important thing is, she has a strong spiritual will. Luo Feng naturally confirmed this after waking. Only with an extremely strong spiritual will infused into the music could it have such a powerful impact. Her spiritual will, even if it has not reached the pinnacle of primal chaos realm, must be close. Luo Feng felt admiration for talent. After all, she is a genius poised to reach the primal chaos realm through the path of music, and with an exceptionally strong spiritual will, Luo Feng truly appreciated. With this interest for talent, Luo Feng began to observe the Snow Tower Master closely. This look caused a slight change in Luo Feng's expression. After the Snow Tower Master finished her performance, she turned and left without speaking. Guests then came out of their trance, each exclaiming in admiration. On one of the corridors of the Wind Snow Tower, the Snow Tower Master walked along the corridor, puzzled to see the black-clad man sitting comfortably drinking wine ahead. This is a forbidden area of my Wind Snow Tower, not open to guests. How did he suddenly end up here? And the formation had no reaction. The Snow Tower Master was somewhat puzzled. Xuefeng Yu. The black-clad man set down his wine jug, looked over calmly, and said, a heavenly snow woman by tribe, born among the clan, cultivated into an eternal true god through talent. Later, controlled by a mysterious force, am I right? Luo Feng watched the Snow Tower Master. The Snow Tower Master's expression changed slightly, as she immediately offered a respectful salute. Faced with the Supreme, I do not know what your commands are. She couldn't determine the strength of the being before her. I have 10 registered disciples under my wing. Would you be willing to become the 11th? Luo Feng, carried by the mood, directly proposed. He had already planned that during his visit to the land of origin, he would take on some registered disciples if fate allowed. Upon hearing this, the Snow Tower Master felt a surge of melancholy. If a powerful being had taken her as a disciple a long time ago, she would naturally have been overjoyed. But now, the Supreme knows, I am not my own master. How can I take guidance from another master? Said the Snow Tower Master. Not your own master. Luo Feng looked at her. Under the domain of his own world, Luo Feng saw at a glance the mark on the Snow Tower Master's forehead, and the true god's heart, inside her infiltrated by layer upon layer of secret patterns. Already completely controlled. She couldn't even commit suicide if she wanted. Disperse. Luo Feng softly commanded. Around him, the world revolved with Luo Feng as its center, causing both the mark and the secret patterns on the true heart to disperse. Now you are free to govern yourself, Luo Feng said to her. The Snow Tower Master couldn't believe it. Feeling the controlling power dissolving from her body, she was overwhelmed with emotion and immediately knelt. Disciple Xuefeng Yu greets the Master. Luo Feng nodded in satisfaction. Master, the power that controlled me is unfathomable. The Snow Tower Master immediately reported. Luo Feng looked up with a smile. That power has already arrived. In the high sky, a colossal figure crossed the void, bathed in thunder, its might covering billions of kilometers. As soon as it appeared, it completely sealed off the vast region around it from the inside and out. Which godly king dares to break my secret technique, and snatch away my divine son? The figure bathed in thunder looked towards Luo Feng. So it's Luo He from the Blade River sect. Luo He, seeing the mystery of my secret technique, you still dare to act. Upon hearing this, the Snow Tower Master was startled. Luo He. The Luo He God King was extremely famous in the surrounding territories. After all, many cultivators had rushed to join when the Blade River sect was established. I am Luo He, Luo Feng said, looking up at the other party, puzzled. And who are you, lingering in the shadows, still not daring to reveal your identity even now? Who I am, someone at the first realm of Godly King is not worthy of knowing. The imposing figure spoke. I am taking my divine son away. If you dare to stop me, don't blame me for leveling your Blade River sect. Saying so, the towering figure stretched out a massive hand. This huge cyan palm, emitting countless bolts of thunder, larger than an entire large city, directly enveloped the area. This scene terrified countless cultivators within the city. There's always a group skulking around in this land of origin, Luo Feng shook his head. Hiding identities within treasures is one thing, but to still hide oneself when capturing an eternal true god in the open. The Snow Tower Master watched nervously at the side. Luo Feng casually waved his hand, be gone. A chaotic whole undying light nurtured within his body was released at once. This blade light, honed to the extreme, instantly cut across the giant hand. The giant hand was strong and tough, but under this blade light, it was forcefully severed, and golden blood dripped down. What, impossible! The imposing figure shouted in surprise and anger. His strong and resilient body couldn't withstand that blade light. Puff! The blade light swept across his body once more, cleaving it in two. The blade light pursued the towering figure, almost in the blink of an eye, cutting the imposing figure into dozens of pieces. Under this blade light, his seemingly mighty body was utterly unable to withstand. Luo He, have you advanced to the second realm of Godly King? The towering figure could not believe it. This terrifying oppressive force and the enigmatic nature of the blade light, both exceeded that of the Emperor of Tien Kuan. He felt the difficulty of dealing with this blade light, as if the blade light could cut everything, and its energy could continuously recover. With his realm's tactics, he simply couldn't dodge this blade light. Stop, stop. Take the divine son if you will, the towering figure urged. Luo Feng, sitting there, looked up. You at the second realm of Godly King, why are you so weak? Boom. Seeing Luo Feng not stopping, the figure had no choice but to explode frantically, turning into countless thunders that fled in all directions, still partially sliced by the blade light in an instant, the remaining thunder disappearing into the world. Whoosh! The streak of blade light flew back from afar, returning to Luo Feng's palm. The Snow Tower Master witnessed this tremblingly. Her master's methods were indeed terrifying. Not bad for power, Luo Feng said, observing the blade light. The blade light hadn't diminished at all, and with a thought, he reabsorbed it into his inner world. Come with me to Huyang City. Do you need to prepare anything? Luo Feng asked the Snow Tower Master. Master, I need to bring my tribe, said the Snow Tower Master. Okay. Luo Feng's body divided, creating an avatar, taking the Snow Tower Master and her tribe to Huyang City together. Luo Feng's original body continued on his journey of exploration. Luo He, I heard you've reached the second realm of Godly King, contacted the monarch of Yu country. You're well informed, Luo Feng laughed heartily, not denying it. From the first realm of Godly King to the ultimate realm, there was no difference in the foundation of divine power or soul, it was mainly the difference in the Tao. Without displaying one's realm of the great Tao, other cultivators would find it difficult to determine. Luo Feng could wield the secret technique of second realm of Godly King, and such profound secret technique at that, the outside world naturally believed he had broken through. This video will end here.